My birthday is in September, and my wife and I like to travel for our birthdays. Hers is a month later. And we frequently traveled to New York City, one of our favorite places. And for years, we would fly up, stay in the theater district, eat at our favorite restaurant, and see a few shows. And we started adding sort of a touristy thing to try to see different parts of the city and do something that we hadn't done in the past. We'd been going for about 10 years when we finally took one of the tours on the big red double-decker buses. We'd sort of made fun of them in the past, but we kind of fell in love with it because it turned out to be a great way to see parts of the city that we wouldn't have looked for otherwise, and you could hop on and hop off and see what you wanted to see. Our tour guide on my birthday, on the 9th of September, was a classic guy from the Bronx, Yankees Hawaiian-style shirt and a big bucket hat and the accent, and had millions of stories. Every street corner, something happened, a movie star, a gangster, something. And we went south down Broadway and made a few turns, and we wound up at the base of the World Trade Center. And the tour guide told us in that thick Bronx accent that when those towers were built, most New Yorkers didn't care for them too much because they were kind of square and bland and didn't have a whole lot of personality. But then he pointed out a roll-up door that used to go into the parking garage where in 1993 terrorists had driven a U-Haul truck full of homemade bombs into the parking garage and tried to blow the whole thing up. And he pointed it out because it was all chained up and that was no longer a way that you could use to get into the parking garage for that building. And he said that New Yorkers had sort of wrapped their arms around these buildings after that 1993 bombing and adopted them and used them as sort of symbols of the strength of New York and New Yorkers. And he was very proud to point up to those buildings and say, as you can see, they're still standing, just like all of us here in New York. And I'll never, ever forget the last thing that he said about those buildings before we moved on. He said, scientists had tested these buildings, engineers and scientists, and that they were built to withstand the full impact of a loaded 747. That was the afternoon of September 9th, 2001, when he made that statement. And less than 48 hours later, he was proven wrong. And I'll never, ever forget that as long as I live.